Alright, welcome along to a new episode. This one, I miss the 90s. And I've just been going through a lot of stuff in my past. If you've been watching this channel for the last couple of months, you'll have seen all these videos about me kind of losing track on what I want to do with my life because of things that have been brought up from my past. And, just in the process of dealing with all that stuff, I've been going back into my past and just working through some things and getting a fresh perspective on stuff that's happened in the past and the way I let myself be treated and the way I really shouldn't have let myself be treated. And, what would you do if you could live that again? Would you do it a little bit different? Of course you would. We all would. We would do something different. Though having said that, your past does create the person you are, and probably without all that sort of stuff, I wouldn't be the person that's doing this sort of thing now. But I do genuinely miss the 90s, looking back to that time, pre-internet, pre-smartphone, the whole thing. It was just a great time to be alive. People were just, I don't want to say better people, but we just dealt with things a lot better back in the 90s. And there was none of this real holding of grudges for the most part back in the 90s. If something kicked off, we would have went out and literally beat 7 shades of crap out of each other and then went for a drink afterwards together. Any hard feelings was done and dusted. Someone would start on you, there's no such thing as the internet back then. So people, if they had a problem with you, they would come to you face to face. Most of the time they would punch you in the mouth and you would punch them back and you would have a fight, and everything was done and dusted on the spot within that evening or a couple of days, whatever it might be. There was never any real major grudges held between people back in the 90s. It was just a better time to be alive, essentially. Looking back, I'm grateful that I had that opportunity to grow up in the 90s, be a child in the 80s, have my teenage years throughout the 90s and whatnot, and the early 2000s. Great time to be alive. I really do miss it, I have to say. It was a lot of fun. No record of it whatsoever. That's the thing about the internet these days, is that there's a constant record. If you're on social media and you're constantly posting, there's always something there that's going to probably incriminate you in some way. But back in the 90s, no such thing. Early 2000s, we get up to some crazy stuff back in the day, and there's no record of it at all. And just to go back to that thing where, things were easier dealt with back in the 90s. That's what I miss about these days. And the prior video that I uploaded last night, the long video about passion and hunger for a project, I shared a story where there was a project I was involved in, and there was a bit of butting of heads. We didn't really agree with each other, and there was a lot of hurt egos in the process of that. And there was a good 2-year period where I had to listen to just nothing but nonsense from a person through email and texts. It was just a disaster. And, that went on for the better part of 2 years on social media and whatnot. The only way you can deal with that these days is to, just block people like that, because they're just constantly going to try and keep poking at you until they can take you down, sort of thing. So there's that aspect of today. The other thing is the whole claim culture sort of a thing. Back in the 90s, you would have had a disagreement, and as I say, you would have ended up in a full-on fist fight with someone on the side of the street, and beat 7 shades out of each other, go for a drink afterwards. In the mid-2000s, probably before it, there's kind of always this kind of, like, in the late 90s I started to notice this coming up, the claim culture, where people would go out and start a fight just so that they would get punched in the face, and then they'd go to the police, and then the solicitors, lawyers, whatever you want to call them, would be involved at all, would be brought in. And the guy that gives them the dig in the chops ends up in court and winds up, having to pay out a whole load of money to people. So that's what I miss about the 90s, is people were just, they had the nerve to stand up and, fight for what they fought, really. There was none of this carry on, or, I'm going to instigate a fight here, then I'm going to claim a bunch of money off it. So I see it all the time at the moment. People trying to wind you. There's a guy, literally at this point, where I work at, and he's a known claim artist. He really is. He's one of these guys that comes into the work environment, and he's just a mouth. Northern Ireland, we call him a slabber. He's a born slabber. He's one of these guys that'll wind you up to the point where you want to strangle his face. But if you do that, the first thing he's going to do is go to the cops, get you lifted, get you into court, get a bunch of money off you. He lost all his man points in everybody's eyes, because he's one of these people that'll do that in the work environment where he's safe. He knows he can wind people up to the point of wanting to really, give them a chop in the mouth. But at the same time, he knows this person can't do something like that because he's at work and he doesn't want to risk losing his job. So he's giving it that constantly. See it all the time. But that same sort of person, if you met them outside of the workplace, they wouldn't open their mouth to you. They're spineless at the end of the day. And again, that's something that I miss about the 90s. Like, people just were braver, better people back then, especially the 80s as well. Like the amount of fights I've gotten into over the years with people that just, disagreed with you over something. I've lost count at this point. But, I've been in a lot of fights over the years, let's just say that. I've won just as many as I've lost. Like, I've had my ass handed to me a couple of times. But, it was just a time in the history of the planet where you were just, you had to stand behind your word. It was great, absolutely great. So I'm going to share a few stories over the next couple of weeks about the past and whatnot. And, I've delved into a lot of stuff just to get my own head sorted out. And there's a few things in the past that have happened that, you like to think that the friends you've had throughout the years are always going to have your back. That's not always the case. There's a lot of people throughout the 90s that, I would have thought, if I ever need something, I can just lift the phone, call these people, and they're going to be there at my back and call. But thinking back through some of the situations I'm going to be talking about in the upcoming videos, there's quite a few instances there where these people were sometimes the instigators and some of the trouble that we get into back in the day. But again, no record on any of that, and no way to actually really prove it. But I'm going to share the stories with you anyway. You might get a laugh out of it. You might get a little bit of inspiration out of some of the stuff. Definitely the experiences I've had since I've left high school and the work environment, even though it's something that I don't, like, at this point, up until 45 years old at this point, I wouldn't say I've had a job that I'm just excited to jump out of bed in the morning to go to. But that's all because of the epileptic seizures that I had whenever I was a teenager. I didn't get into the work environment that I kind of had to go to. And even at that option wasn't an option I wanted to do anyway, because I had that interest in science that was talked out of by the religious fanatics back in the day. So yeah, I've been going down a road. I'll just be honest, I've been on a road now for the last 30 years or so that I genuinely feel I should never have been on in the first place. But I've learned a lot through all of it. And again, you know, sometimes the experiences that you have in the past, you know, they create the person you are today. And perhaps without those experiences, I wouldn't be the person sitting in front of this camera now making videos in the hopes of helping people. So I can't complain too badly. But yeah, I'm just kind of jonesing for the 90s at this point. I think that culture and the way we acted and behaved back then is something that the world could really use at this point. Now, I don't want to get rid of the internet and lose my YouTube channels and podcasts and whatnot. Love doing this sort of stuff. But if the 90s attitude could be implemented in the modern day, I think the world would be a better place. Right, that's going to do it for this video. Just thought I'd come on and talk nonsense for a little while, and I'll talk to you tomorrow night.